And joining me right now is Keith Willoughby, the Dean of the University of Saskatchewan Business School, Edwards School of Business. And of course, Keith is our guru in analytics. And I was talking, I don't know if you heard me talking earlier, Keith, to Farhan, but I was telling Farhan that about yourself and your analytics and bragging about how good you are at it, I might add. And I told him that, I told Farhan, I said, that you've got basically a 3.5 point advantage to the home team generally built into your analytics. And then we were talking about how difficult it is to win in Winnipeg because Farhan is calling the Bombers to beat the Stampeders on Friday night because they're so tough to play against at home in Winnipeg. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to have to tell this to Keith. Will Keith move 3.5 point home field advantage up for Winnipeg to 4.5, or does that make any sense at all?
Well, it's a great question, Don, and thanks for Farhan for mentioning that. It's something we've never looked at in the decade that we've been doing the CFL simulations. The 3.5 points for a home team it's an average. When we looked at a number of years of data
Right.
and calculated that home teams are roughly about 3.5 points in terms of that home field advantage. But let's also recognize that there are distinct advantages at some times for some teams when they play at home. Winnipeg is a classic example right now where they've got that home field advantage. And even think back in Saskatchewan during the glory years of that 2006 to 2013 era.
Mm-hmm.
The Riders had a home field advantage. Even during Coach Craig Dickinson's first about 2.5 years as head coach, the Riders were 16-3 at one time at home. So there are times, depending upon the franchise, depending upon the venue, where that home field advantage can be an incredible advantage to any team.
And it makes you almost forget, but it makes you realize Craig Dickinson had a great record his first few years as the head coach of the Rough Riders. I got to give you a bit of a shout out because you're an out-of-town Rider season ticket holder, and you stayed in Regina on Friday night as the loyal fan that you are, and went to the game on Saturday. That's commitment, because how many hours total is that away from home for you on the weekend?
Well, Don, now I know what a cricket fan feels like in terms of going to games over multiple days. So it was a 30-hour weekend.
Wow.
30-hour commitment from when we left Saskatoon until when we got back would have been like in the evening on Saturday. Now, again, we were fortunate. We had booked a hotel room earlier in the week, just thinking that, you never know what's going to happen. It's a late night game, which makes it harder the older I get to drive back on Highway 11 back to Saskatoon. So we were fortunate we had a hotel room, but I tell you, it was a long time sitting at Mosaic Friday evening, and an even worse outcome on Saturday. That was painful to observe in the stands.
Now, the Riders put on the pads their first practice yesterday. The coach meant business for more physicality, less mental bust. But I thought it was good on the coach to do that. Put them in pads, let them go, and set the tone for more physical football, Saturday night in Vancouver.
Excellent point, Don. And again, I think big picture, as any sports fan knows, there are very few franchises in professional football that go perfect. The 48 Calgary Stampeders went 12-0. The New England Patriots, they lost the Super Bowl that year, but they were undefeated in the regular season. So we always know we're going to lose at least once during the year. I think what's frustrating for Rider Nation is how we lost. As the season went on, for the first 4 games, our running game got stronger and stronger. The physicality was there. And then it seemed on Saturday afternoon that we ran into a brick wall known as the Calgary front seven. AJ and Kadeem Carey, the inability to move the ball. Maybe we need that physicality back because BC will be a very tough match in a very loud, raucous crowd on Saturday evening in Vancouver.
Well, you mentioned the undefeated 1948 Calgary Stampeders. They wore those stripes on their shoulders in 48, and the Stamps have gone way back into their past and put them back on. the stripes on the shoulders. That's why I still advocate very strongly, Keith, that the Riders should be wearing their 1966 Grey Cup uniforms to this day. I still advocate that for anybody that's listening, and I don't think anybody is.
And again, if we can rub off that 66 magic, I would definitely love that. I think just anything to really try to stem the tide, because I know Rider Nation right now, we're happy that we're 4-1, don't get me wrong, but I think people have seen this movie before for the last couple of seasons, and now we don't want to have any turbulence as we go into the next part of the schedule in 2025.
Well, you did mention this earlier. Over the past 3 seasons, the Riders 10-2 in their first 4 games. After that, for the remainder of the season, they're 11-30-1. So, I mean, I guess we're all hoping as Rider fans that what's happened, over the past 3 seasons isn't going to repeat itself with that sort of numbers.
And I think that's where we're looking, obviously, to Coach Mace to really ensure that the leadership is there from the coaching perspective, but also the leaders who are in the locker room, our veteran players, to stand up and not have this recurrence of the past few seasons where we start off with such an accelerated pace, but we just can't maintain the gains for the rest of the season. And it is a gauntlet coming up for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. I know we have home games against Edmonton and Hamilton, but we're traveling to British Columbia, we're traveling to Montreal, we're traveling to Calgary. We have a back-to-back against Winnipeg. So it's opportunity now for the Riders to really step up and emerge, because if we end up doing really well over the next 5-6 games, that's going to restore the pride, restore the opportunities of finishing first in the West this year.
Now, in terms of your computer model, you were mentioning the Lions have a 59% chance to defeat Saskatchewan. So obviously the computer was impressed with the Lions in Edmonton, very much so, and not so much the Rough Riders, I guess, because that's a pretty high number for a team that's 4-1 versus another club that's 3-3.
Yeah, the computer model does put more emphasis on the most recent games played. So BC, they had the win in Montreal on the road, a tough place to play in, and then the win in Edmonton. That was I've rarely seen a quarterback that efficient as Nathan Rourke. I think back to one of Ron Lancaster's games in the '76 season when we shut out the Edmonton franchise 40-0, and Lancaster was 23 of 27 for 290 yards that day. Rourke looked just as impressive, and so I think that's what the model's picking up. That BC obviously playing at home gives them an advantage. When we beat BC by 19, 2 weeks ago? Again, it seems 3 weeks ago. It seems like a longer time ago, given we've had the bye week. But Rourke wasn't in the lineup, and I think that is the missing ingredient for the Lions right now. They looked incredible on all sides of the ball against the Elks.
Right, and they're 3-1 with Nathan Rourke. You mentioned how you can have some good stats, or a player can play well and you lose. Everybody, forgot about what a tremendous passing game Trevor Harris had. He had the best quarterback efficiency in the CFL for all quarterbacks this past game. He was just on fire in so many categories, and yet nobody even talked about how good he was in that game. They had no running game.
Yeah, true. I'd heard a post-game comment from Trevor, and I thought it was very insightful. He commented about his yards after beatdown, basically the yards that he got in the fourth quarter. And again, it was only a 24-10 game. It was still a 2-possession game, but I think what will really stick in the minds of the Riders is the 2 or 3 times we got down near the Stampeder goal line, faced a third down, and couldn't punch the ball into the end zone.
Yeah, here it is. Nobody talks about it because of the loss and because of the smoke. Harris had a grade of 87.9 on PFF. And of course, that's an analytic. 8 consecutive starts with 70% plus completion rate, tying a CFL record. 425 yards passing, 330-yard plus completions, 118.1 efficiency rating. And I thought, after all of the smoke business and the loss, Trevor Harris must feel like Rodney Dangerfield. The man didn't get any respect for that performance.
I think anyway. The one thing that the Rider Nation, where we can have some consolation, is with Trevor, his quarterback. If he has the time to throw the ball, He doesn't throw interceptions that much. He doesn't throw incompletions that much. You mentioned his completion percentage. I think where Calgary really had our number on Saturday afternoon was there were times that Trevor didn't have the time, didn't have the opportunity of being able to get to the second or third read in the receiving patterns.
I still think Corey Mace will get a hold of this, but the Rough Riders lead the CFL in penalties. They've given up, I believe it's 481 yards. The Rider defense has had 20 penalties called against them this year. They've really got to tighten that up, don't they, Keith, in Vancouver?
They do. I think, again, maybe the result for the Rider penalties is skewed because we only played 5 games, and the Toronto game was a slugfest in more ways than one. I'm surprised to hear that the Riders are leading the league because I don't know if they still have yet to count the penalties from the BC Montreal brawl because that was obviously quite a couple weeks ago that happened. We've had a couple instances again where the Riders were playing without that composure. I thought Saturday afternoon's game, the Riders they were playing within the confines. Vernon Adams picked them apart. And my late father taught me to, yes, you cheer for the Riders, but you also tip your cap when the opponent makes a good play. And VA made some incredible throws to Philpott, to Damien Alford. He was finding the open receiver. And even when there was a tight window, VA was putting it right where it needed to be.
Oh, he was. And he was getting like his second, third, sometimes fourth reads completed. I agree with you, though, Keith. Like when I see a spectacular play by an opponent, I'm not happy about it, but I appreciate it because it's great athleticism. I don't just cheer against a great play because it's against the Riders or my favorite team. It's tremendous athletes that are entertaining us, isn't it?
They are, and I think again, Vernon Adams Jr. had a stellar game, and we saw obviously what Nathan Rourke did against Edmonton. I think that's where Rider fans are now looking. You've got a very congested West Division right now.
Yeah.
Maybe for the moment we can discard Edmonton. Who knows how they're going to fare? But I tell you, there are 4 very deep teams: BC, Calgary, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan. In terms of being able, who's going to emerge on top? Because it's each team has its definite strengths and real proficiencies.
Let's get back to your computer model, which I enjoy talking about. Calgary now has a 64% probability, 64, of winning the Grey Cup. Talking about skyrocketing with the computer model.
Yeah, this looks like interest rates in the early 1980s now, where things were skyrocketing overnight. This is, to give people a perspective, 2 weeks ago, the Stampeders had a 3% probability of winning the Grey Cup. Again, they were fresh off the loss against Ottawa in the monsoon, Ottawa's only win this season. But then Calgary faces a very tough Winnipeg team at Calgary and manhandles them. They go to Saskatchewan, they manhandle the Riders at Mosaic. The model is picking up now that Calgary's on this real upsurge of 2 impressive victories against 2 impressive opponents.
And the good news is it still picks really quickly here, about 30 seconds left. It still picks Saskatchewan finishing at 12-6 despite it all. So that's actually pretty encouraging.
Yeah, the computer model, again, trust me, I'm not trying to give it any special Rider flavor when it does the analysis. But it still believes in the Greenwood. It still has the Riders now finishing second to Calgary in the West, which will be hosting a playoff game. Again, 12-6, we'll see what happens right now. We're 4-1. We've got some winnable games and some tough games. But as a Rider fan, I'm looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting what happens, Saturday night. And I think, knowing Corey Mace, they're going to be ready. They're going to be popping, and they're against a tough opponent. So that'll be very interesting to watch. And I hope to have you next Wednesday when I do Cage again to analyze that. Keith Willoughby, thank you very much. Sports Cage continues in just a moment.